the current scenario, how the pandemic, we have dealt with various aspects of our lifestyle. So now we are talking about connected cities, cities of the future. So my first question to our eminent speakers here is, they all have been taking their own takes uh, during this time of pandemic. So how, what were the initiatives that, Mr. Chakti, you took, and Mr. Davekar, that you took for your respective states during this, scenario when we had pandemic and we had the COVID-19 situation? Mr. Chakti, what were your initiatives in your state that you had taken?
First of all, am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. Regarding COVID management, I think all states, including Arunachal Pradesh, they have prepared GIS maps of spread of COVID. Like we have our open portal, anyone can access, and you can see the status of cases, fresh cases coming up, cumulative cases, beds, vacancies, vacant beds, and hospitals. Then you can see the nature of spread of disease. You can see uh, the visualization is very clear. So it helps map the trends of COVID spread. So it was very helpful. Definitely, GIS was important thing. But that is a very simple tool because that is a horizontal type of uh, description that we are doing while visualizing. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So that was one initiative. What's most important in these times is the availability of information. And if you can have it on your tips, if you have that connected information, that becomes an important part of the entire management. Mr. Davekar, how did you deal with the present situation in your state?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. And I also thank you for inviting me in this forum. Actually, COVID was a very unfortunate incident. What all the we have go through globally. In Gandhinagar, we have used our integrated control and command center, which is being established in our smart city. All the properties are mapped. All the properties are having GIS based monitoring system. So we have ascertained our containment area from the ICCC only. Moreover, COVID consultation through WhatsApp call. We have we started a consultation through WhatsApp call. A doctor was sitting there in our control center. Anyone from general public can have WhatsApp consultation. So COVID was that kind of scenario. People were not allowed to come outside their home. So it was very useful to people that they can consult particular doctor from their home only. So it was a very good initiative, and people have appraised these initiatives in Gandhinagar.
Okay. That's it.
Yes.
So we spoke about GIS, we spoke about integrated measures that were taken, control rooms being set up. Mr. Gupta, coming to you, has the pandemic kind of accelerated the use of digital tools in our cities, in our, among our policymakers? What has your, observation?
Folds last year, the Zoom call itself has grown 500%. This meeting we are having, instead of virtual, having it on a digital platform itself. And most of the meetings today is like conferences we are doing on the virtual platform itself. And it has created a lot of efficiency and efficacy into the system, which we all can utilize. It's up to us now how going forward we take this, how effectively we can utilize this. One thing I'll say, a big reflection we as an industry had, or I personally had, Mr. Davekar talked about using the command control center to certain effect utilization of the COVID. I'll say one critical aspect, if I would have a much more integrated platform, the way China operated out of COVID, where their cameras were sensed across. The temperatures were taken, recorded at a central location. They could manage a lot of things. The way UK operated during this COVID times, Indian ecosystem of the smart city is lacking much behind the rest of the world on that account. We as an organization or as a country operates in multiple silos, and we reflected if those silos are broken and brought into a city environment, integrated city environment, will deliver a different value to us as a as a country, as a nation, as a city, as a
So much more could have been done. I think what Mr. Gupta is saying, that yes, we did initiate lot of technology solutions, but much more could have been done. Mr. Chokki, and Mr. Davekar, I would come to you in terms of what have been the challenges. Because this was, as Mr. Gupta also said, it was a black swan event, and it just happened so suddenly that everyone was caught unaware. So what were the challenges in preparation? Mr. Chokki, you asked, spoke about GIS, but implementation of that GIS within that short span of time. So what had been your challenges?
You're talking of Arunachal Pradesh?
Yes.
It is a totally different scenario in Arunachal Pradesh. The biggest challenge in Arunachal Pradesh since long has been connectivity, whether it is roads, whether it is telecom. So if you have to send one item from, let us say, Guwahati to, let us say, interiors of Arunachal, border of Arunachal, then the roads, they are not so good in the interiors. In the capital, it's fine. Certain national highways are fine, but you have to go to the interior. It's a real challenge to take medicines, to take goods, to track people, to get the patients from distant locations to the nearest hospital. Then we had problems related to oxygen plants. So of course we had a real shortage. Luckily, we did not have as many patients as there were in the mainland. So the positivity rate was also not very high, and the spread was contained because of the low density of population. However, the challenges arise when you are checking people who are coming by road to the capital. So you install testing facilities on the way, and that is where you get the maximum number of infected patients. So that was one of the biggest challenge. After 1 year, the situation has improved a lot. So apart from this connectivity issue, roads, the second aspect is connectivity with respect to telecom. There are many areas which are not well connected with internet. In the border areas, in fact, your mobile calls may not be going. Only BSNL has certain infrastructure in the border areas. Even now we are thinking of VSATs in the distant locations. So there are issues with reference to telecom also. As regards phase 2 of COVID management, that is vaccination, there were cases when people had to trek over the mountains, they had to crisscross boundaries, rivers, even the bridges. They're not the type of concrete bridges, steel bridges that you find in mainland. There were many which are made of local material. So people the vaccination team had to go on foot over 9 hours, let us say, to reach the people in the distant locations, distant villages settled in the hills. Now you imagine the population is only about 15 lakhs in Arunachal Pradesh, and overall area is about 83,000 square kilometers. So the spread is huge. This provides a different type of challenge as compared to the mainland. Thank you.
Okay, those were some very challenging, I think, aspects of entire management, and especially in terms of technology. Even if you want to implement that technology, the infrastructure has to be there. Mr. Davekar, what were your challenges when in terms of implementation of technology to enable management? How did you face that?
Yes, actually, in Gujarat, we didn't need to face the same problem as like in Arunachal Pradesh, because we have more planes. Rather, I can say that we have to face like shortages of oxygen, scarcity of manpower. Demand was increasing at its peak, and resources were limited at that time. Pandemic has flown very, in very short span of time. So our medical system, our clinical system was not cope up with that. So in Gujarat and in Gandhinagar, we have faced those kind of these kind of problems. Actually, at that time, there were two demands arising day by day. One, bed occupancy. We don't have that much of bed, and patients were lying outside the hospitals without having medical treatment. And on the other way, deaths were increasing, and crematorium was also limited. So the line in crematoriums were also very high. So it was very bad scenario. But on the administration side, we have coped up it, and we have put our maximum effort. Uh, I think all of our administration people were working round the clock without having any rest. Medical staff was also there. So we fight up to our maximum potential in Gujarat and in Gandhinagar as well.
Right. Mr. Gupta, I'll come to you now. We just heard Mr. Chakti about the infrastructure problem. Many states have. Arunachal Pradesh is just one of them. Mr. Davekar spoke about, although there was no connectivity problem, but there were physical problems that the management of the city corporations had to face. Looking at these kind of challenges, how do you suggest that we can kind of make technology an enabler in addressing these challenges?
No, I was quite resonate with both the gentlemen here that we couldn't reach to the remote locations during this COVID times. We don't have a rural connectivity today. We're still talking about running a big program as a government of India, as a BharatNet, to connect the rural part of India. I can't resonate more than that. But there is a much more to reflect back. If I say that if we have to see the trees, we have to step back out of the forest and to see those trees. It's like that. India is a country which is growing over a period of time, and we are always a cash issue. How to build infrastructure, how to go back and invest more back into the society. And on the contrary, when I look at it in any of the cities scenario today, there is a similar asset or infrastructure is getting built multiple times in a disaggregated manner. If I just give you an example, just to elaborate out here for everyone's interest, a city will have a data center. A city will have an ICT infrastructure for the state ICT project. A city will have a safe city infrastructure separately. City will have ITMS infrastructure separately, police infrastructure separately, smart city infrastructure separately. And we'll have a similar way in the telecom infrastructure. We say rural doesn't have a connectivity. If I look at it within the same city, I'll have a different communication networks of the infrastructure. Somewhere geo or TSPs, if I call it, rather than naming somebody, or somewhere ISPs will have a network. Now think of this way: in the same city, do I have a multiple roads to go from one place to another? Answer is no. Do I have a multiple water lines to reach to my home? The answer is no. So it's something to how do we bridge this gap of rather than deploying that investment within the same location, we have that investment distributed across. That's a one larger issue which we should reflect upon. And if we have to do that, if we do that in a holistic way, Can we do that in an integrated approach? I'm coming now to the tech part of it, which you said that if we have an integrated model of delivery, if I put up a one infrastructure for the city where multiple technologies can come and sit together, multiple users can come and sit together, that will deliver a much effective, cohesive, I'll say, outcome to the city. We need to have a framework, if I put it that way. We need to have a framework where integrated ICT fund can be deployed for a city or for a state or for a region specifically, where all the departments comes and invest in a centralized fashion to make that area deliver the services. So what I call it a city-based ICT infrastructure policy, if we bring it together, because technology has a use cases, technology has a spend. Today, whatever technology I'm deploying, technology is getting obsolete. What I deployed 5 years back, if I look at all my smart cities, safe cities, which I started 6 years back as a program, those has the use cases of that day. Today, the use cases have evolved. So now it's important that we build that city utility corridors where I can reach to the rural place wherever I'm required, and all utilities can reach together at a single point of time. And then technology framework, the technology platform which is built across to take at different locations will deliver a multiple use cases, and that's where the technology comes in. If we have a basic infrastructure platform, like Mr. Devendra mentioned or Sir mentioned earlier, that we couldn't reach to rural area because we didn't ever thought of reaching there. We never thought of creating those utility corridors to that locations. Now, I've been to places where forget about mobile towers. To connect those towers with the power utility doesn't exist. Power doesn't exist on those areas. I mean, he's talking about Arunachal, which I agree, and there are further more border areas where we don't have powers. So for us to build that basic infrastructure, a utility corridor across is the step one. In those utility corridors, having a digital platform, a connectivity platform, is becomes a must kind of scenario, which can come of a broad-based ICT infrastructure policy where all users can come together, pool in their funds and deliver that. And then we can have a sensors, whether it is cameras, where multiple use cases can evolve on top of that to deliver those services, what my consumer, what technology can deliver to them. That's where I'll say before we jump into deliver actual technology, and that infrastructure needs to be in place, and that comes as a single utility corridor across the country.
Okay. So what Mr. Gupta here is saying, first let's get the basics right. The basics utilities should be in place. Then we go on to the ICT infrastructure, and then we can, go on to the centralized system for the service delivery. Mr. Chakri, you just heard that these are some of the ways that one should first of all the funding in the right way, distribution of funding to the various departments, so that we can bring them together on a central platform. We can have our power systems in place. How are you, looking at building this entire infrastructure, starting from power and then to ICT and then to the centralized systems? What are the initiatives that you have been taking in your state?
First of all, Government of India has a scheme for spreading broadband. So we have logged on to that. Then for the interiors, where the requirement of bandwidth is not much, we have gone for VSAT process, and Government of India is helping us. BBNL is here. For certain areas, we have requested private companies like Airtel and Jio to lay their broadband network, because BSNL has been facing cash crunch, so investment was difficult for them. Apart from that, you need some network connectivity, you need some central infrastructure at the central location. So we already have our network, we have our state centers for data, etc. But we are now expanding the data center part. That will help us to save that problem when when we are hiring in other states. from other like Amazon Web Services or NIC Cloud, etc. So if the connectivity is not there, the data center will not be useful. So we are trying to have a full-fledged data center at our place. That is one aspect. Then we have our own council for IT. So it can make autonomous, independent decisions. It need not be caught up in that bureaucratic framework. HR policy is also very important. So many people have been trained. Luckily, many people in Arunachal are good at computers. That is not an issue. You can get cheap labor also. And on the top of it, if you want good IT people, we have a good system. We have a good support from NIC. So the best in the country are also in Arunachal Pradesh. In terms of HR, we don't have any problem. So talking of structure, talking of process, talking of behavior. So these are a multitude of things which are to be taken care of. In fact, we have started e-office full-fledged. So when people are going to distant regions, then also they are working on NIC e-office. So productivity is not going down. So now next we are thinking of Sparrow system. So where your annual confidential reports, they are only online. This system has already been implemented in Government of India. So we are playing the catch-up game, and in a year or so, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of processes, in terms of manpower, I think we should be equal to any other state.
Okay, fantastic. So good to know that a lot of initiatives being taken, for internal processes, for the manpower, for the state itself. Mr. Davekar, coming to you, what have been your focus areas in terms of building this entire infrastructure of telecommunication, in terms of bringing in technology in all aspects of city management?
Yes, actually in Gujarat, it was started since 2005, way back 15-17 years ago. We have started eGram Vishwagram project, in which all the village panchayats were connected through internet. eNagar project, in which all the cities were connected through internet. All the citizen services were online. People can avail services from their home only. They need not to come to the office except once or twice. So these projects were very useful for people. E-Dhara, land measurement of land was also computerized and was available for all the people. Newly established Act, RERA Act, is also an initiative from Gujarat. Moreover, state fiber grid network and implementation of smart cities are the backbone for development and development for and IT relatives. So we are just doing this from last 15 days. More scope is there. We have to. We also have some connectivity issues in our remote places in entire Gujarat. Some tribal pockets are there where connectivity is not that kind of, it is not that kind of remarkable. But we are working on it, and shortly we will be resolving this problem also.
Okay.
One of the most initiative has been taken by our Honorable Chief Minister, sir. CM Dashboard project. Chief Minister can see entire states, what are going on in entire state from his bungalow only. How many street lights are working in any of the Nagarpalika, means municipality. How many cases are pending in any of the office. How many cases are resolved. And how many grievances have been redressed, etc. can be availed by Honorable Chief Minister at any moment of time. So it is also a good project. Politicians are, also getting aware what the administrators and bureaucrats are doing.
Okay, so some great initiatives by the government, the state governments, the city planners. Mr. Gupta, do you see the intention is there, the initiatives are already put in place. Do you see opportunity for the private sector to bring in their knowledge, their expertise, and hold hands with the government agencies?
Uh, Definitely, I'll say there's a lot of opportunity out there. It's a great initiatives as India as a country we have taken. If I say Dubai launched one app, both Mr. Ajay Chakti or Mr. Davika must be aware of it. That Dubai launched one app kind of a month back, where at one place 90 applications, 90 services can be provided to a citizen. A citizen can go in a one location and get all their services done. And we are moving in that direction. Somewhere we have 5, somewhere we have 10, somewhere we have 15. We are moving in that direction. So all those initiatives are coming in place. But where are we lacking? Like you said, that how private sector can play in. To have this whole digital connectivity across the city or a state or a country, I'll say the digital connectivity has got 3 layers basically. First layer is what we call it a high speed connectivity layer, which both of my colleagues on the panel talked about, that they don't have a rural connectivity. That's one part of it. The second part of it, bringing that to a central location, which Mr. Chatri said that he's building up a data center, or I may call it a knockout there, and where it comes, gets integrated, gets analyzed, and gets. So what's happening is government is building these at a certain pace with a certain amount of funds available to them. Now, if private sector is brought in, into the game, government can build the basic framework. When I say the basic framework, they can put up this connectivity which Mr. Shakti talked about, that the rural government is taking some initiatives to reach to the rural, government is taking some initiatives to put these data centers up, and let private sector come in and play on providing these multiple services on this platform to the consumers, to the citizens of the country. If a very simple example is Google, we all use Google as a tool to travel from place A to place B, and it helps us to save time to the citizens. It helps the nation by saving the fuel, which is not getting burned on the ground. On the contrary, Google is making that money by capturing that data in its place and utilizing the data for doing more stuff into the country. But that's Google is one example. There are multiple utilities, I'll say more than dozens of companies who are working in this space, who has a niche area, who can come and provide those services. But they don't have a platform today. They don't have a platform. A city doesn't have a platform. If I want to come as an initiative, say I want to do a monitoring of the city and give you AI ML based solution to the city, where I can monetize out of the data. Government gets the benefit of any crime, any information, anything happening on the city. That kind of a public-private partnership. Typically in public-private partnership, we say that government will fund this and private sector will fund this. Let's come together. But we have to go beyond that thought, where we are saying government provides the basic infrastructure, government becomes an infrastructure platform provider, and the private sector comes in and provides multiple services. A company X has got an expertise in a particular area, can come forward, provide that expertise. There's a company called Glocal who provides the health services to the rural area. He can come and put up his platform on the government data center and provide the health services across the state. There are multiple such companies who exist in the country. STL as a company ourselves, we can put up this whole infrastructure, whole model together. We are working on different aspects in different parts of the country in this particular direction, where the platform is being provided by the government of India and the multiple services can be added on. So the public-private partnership, when it comes that the funding gap It addresses two parts of the problem. One is the fund availability with the government of India. Second, it avoids the obsolescence of the technology, because the person, the company who is expert in that technology will keep on innovating, bringing the technology, upgrading the technology while maintaining that network and providing that services to the citizens.
Very right. Mr. Chakri, you just listen to him, that government becomes, as a platform, and the private operators come in, provide the services. How do you see this happening? Is government open to that kind of a, role model?
This concept of platform as a service, I first heard from Nandan Nilekani few years back, and the idea was excellent. Now, if you see this launch of health system by Honorable Pradhan Mantri ji, health mission, he has talked of some digital platform. This is an excellent way. This is an excellent way of providing service, wherein the government is providing the platform and services can be built on it. There will be other platforms also, but as regards data center, my worry is that government departments are not expert in setting up data centers, nor is it their core function. They can at best let it out. There are many companies in Hyderabad, in Bangalore, like 3S, etc., which can provide these services. Now, why do we talk of IT only? Let us talk of geospatial applications. If you think of the services that are being provided by the cities, by the towns, you have water, you have telecom, you have municipal services, etc. So all these things, all this data needs to be sensed, data is to be captured, it is to be analyzed, and it is to be visualized. So the government can definitely provide a platform where all the data comes, the government collects the data, but the private sector can help, for example, in data analysis, in planning good dashboards, and in quick response. This is where the expertise of private sector can come in.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, private players can be more, can have much more role in in the service of the nation. I have heard somewhere that only 2% employment is being generated by governments, but 98% employment has been generated by private sector. So, public-private partnership and role of private companies are much more important in service of the people. Government has some restrictions, some limitations on funding, on channelizing the resources, whereas private players can have that kind of liberty. They can give result in very short time of span, and they have quality manpower also. Government being a service organization cannot be result oriented, but the government has to be service oriented. So these are the main differences.
Okay, great. So our panelists do agree, our speakers agree that there can be a great synergies between the public and the private segment, and that is the way to go forward, and bringing in the right service delivery, prompt service delivery to the citizens. Now, another very important stakeholder in this entire ecosystem is the citizens of the, of the city, of the country, of the state. So, we have these platforms, we have this technology, but bringing that awareness to the citizens, bringing the community within that fold, making them part of this entire initiative. So how are the state governments, Mr. Davekar, how are you engaging the communities when, in the management, in the city management, in, making them aware of the technologies, how they can avail that? How is the community being engaged?
Well, we are engaging social media in terms of our all the services. People are uh, giving their response on social media as well as through our elected political persons also. Uh, uh, just I would like to give an example. We are running cleanliness drive during this October month. So on every Sunday, we are doing campaigning. Cleanliness program is there. All the people are participating in this cleanliness drive. For our smart city, we are inviting suggestions from general common people how they want Gandhinagar means our city after 5 years, after 10 years. They can give suggestion to us. We will look into and will incorporate if it is feasible. So we are engaging people by many ways. We are displaying our activities on our VMDs, on our social medias. Press notes are being issued timely, and YouTube channel is also there for Gandhinagar Smart City. So we are engaging these kind of people by many ways.
Mr. Chakri, coming to you, how are you assessing what people want? What are their requirements, and then building your initiatives on that? So, how are you reaching out?
First of all, basic services, bijli, pani, sadak, these are the basic requirements of a citizen. And if you add now Wi-Fi is in terms of Maslow's hierarchy, it becomes the fundamental need of citizen now. Anyway, coming to the requirements of citizens, understanding their needs, all we have to do is study this Niti Aayog's books, survey studies on SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. So we have for Northeast states. Similarly, for districts also, Niti Aayog has compiled versions. So you can go to their dashboard, you can see in a particular district, what is the extent of gap in a particular service. So that is not the issue, identifying the gaps. That is very easy. How you redress it in long-term manner and in administrative manner. So long-term manner is always legal. Legal aspect is, have you a right to time-bound delivery of services act? It ensures that whatever the citizen is entitled to is given to him, and there is a penalty system if the service is not delivered within certain time limit. So we have only 27 services, but they are crucial services in the act, right to time-bound delivery of services act. Then the normal thing is everywhere is right to information. Somehow we have been following it very seriously, and information is being provided. So the citizen requirement, the citizen problems are being addressed through that. But main thing for short term is your feedback mechanism. And these days you will find social media is very active, not only from the government side, but from the people side. There is for example, on Facebook, we go and click Ita Nagar News. I go check daily, what is the citizen problem today? From there I get feedback. If the results are not being declared in time, what is the feedback from the citizens? I get it by the evening. And I am able to alert my chief secretary. He said, this is the problem that the citizens are marking today. What we must learn from one particular state, Uttar Pradesh, not today in the good books of the citizen, but their grievance redressal system is one of the best. They have level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. So if the service is not delivered in a certain time, then level 2 is activated. If the level 2 is also not able to deliver, level 3 is activated. Then citizen has the right to give feedback, and the complaint is closed only if his feedback is taken and he is happy. exceptions will be there. Some citizens will just keep on troubling you. So level 3, level 4, they have discretionary rights to close the complaints in case they find that service has been delivered. The situation now in Uttar Pradesh, I came to know, is that the Patwari himself, he will ring up the applicant. Sir, आपका वो था application for mutation. Please come इसको करवा लीजिए sir. Why? Because the dashboard at the top is monitoring this. It is being monitored through this dashboard. So engagement can be in many ways. One is day-to-day, social media, your public grievance system, then your information system, that is Right to Information Act. Then there is entitlement, Right to Time-Bound Delivery of Services Act. But the most important thing is social media these days. I agree with my colleague.
Right. Okay, great. So, Mr. Chakti, raise some very valid points here. That one is the redressal system. You can have all the systems in place, but public redressal system has to be the strongest. The right of information has to be strongest. And social media, Mr. Gupta, Mr. Chakti spoke about, that how social media has become very strong. So what are your thoughts on that? When we are talking about this entire smart city scenario, we are talking about ICT infrastructure. Where does social media finds its place?
I'll have a very simple view on this. Like we are growing in different phases in different parts of India. My urban India is way ahead, where social media has taken the front seat. My rural India is still struggling with the bread and butter of the roads and the way Mr. Chakti said, Sadak, Pani and Bijli. They're struggling on that. So if I talk about urban India, the urban India understands what technology, what digital services can deliver today. Whosoever, whatever category of people I have in urban India, I can go to the lowest level and then go to the highest level of income group. And you can find everyone understands the power of social media in the country today. And people are very effectively utilizing this, maybe a redressal system the way it is. I heard Mr. Prabhu 4 years back, the way he changed the railway system completely, how any incident in the railway system can be tracked and how quickly it gets responded back less than 24 hours. So social media is very, very effectively utilized, and that's where the ICT or digital part is playing a much, much larger role. But now it's a time has come, I'll say, where we say that people now know how to use the digital services. If you would have asked me 5 years back, yes, there was a challenge for people how to use social media, how to use the digital services, how to use the different means of communication today, whether Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. We have multiple mediums to communicate. And now it's a time that as an industry, we enable more services and more platforms to make this social media rather than an information, an effective use of that. Like right now, somebody is taking control of it. Somebody has to sit down and do that action. How do we bring in AI and ML in this space? To have an automatic corrective action around the inputs which are coming in from the public, from the people. And that's where I see the next step, which all these social media companies are taking forward, that this is what has come in and there's a corrective action to it, and action is taken automatically by the AI. And that engine is continuously improving the whole system. It's not like the mistakes what I did yesterday will going to happen today itself. There's a learning mechanism, there's an implementation mechanism, there's an action mechanism, and there's that learning gets implemented so that the mistakes are not repeated. And that's where this social media is going. That's where the expectation of the citizens are moving. That's my absolutely, like you can say, a personal understanding, the way I see the social media is moving, the way the expectation as a citizen, I'm seeing that if my redressal has to go, today I have a complaint, next time it doesn't have to take 2 hours or 24 hours, it should get reduced day by day. And that's the kind of efficiency and the productivity we are expecting or looking at to build with the help of ICT within our smarter cities or digitally connected cities.
That's right. I think with the mobile, penetration, with the number of mobile users increasing in India exponentially. I think social media has got hold of most of the citizens. Mr. Davekar, what are your views on social media now? How is it impacting you and your redressal system?
Social media is undoubtedly a best key tool to address the redressal. Everybody is using WhatsApp. So our mobile numbers are in public domain. Uh, Someone, if anyone have some kind of complaint, they can raise on WhatsApp too. It is being resolved on WhatsApp only. Moreover, we have our Twitter accounts, Facebook accounts, and Instagram accounts. They are going to complain on these accounts also. We are addressing it in due course of time. So social media undoubtedly being a major role in these kind of services.
Yes, Twitter is, I think, one of the that social media app where we see a lot of citizens coming and they're putting their queries there, putting their complaints there, and it's a two-way engagement, I believe, between the policymakers and the citizens. Now, another aspect that we have not touched about is the sustainability, disaster-resistant cities. Because this pandemic has been an eye opener that we have to make our cities disaster resistant. So how technology, how our ICT infrastructure, in terms of water management, in terms of our wastewater management, in terms of energy efficiency, Mr. Chakti and Mr. Davekar, I'd like your views. How we are making our cities of the future not only smart but also sustainable.
Good question. In fact, in the past or even in the current scenario, most of the cities and towns, the departments therein are existing in silos. So the first thing is to create a shared mechanism. Technology is a force multiplier here. For example, you have a wastewater system, you have water system, you have a telecom system. Some problem is occurring. Disaster has occurred at a particular place and you are not getting real-time feedback from that place. And the impact it is creating at other places, that feedback is also not available. So the concept of smart city, the enablement of digital environment, that is the crux of the issue. So you have to capture data on a real-time basis. You have to examine it. You have to send it to the command and control center, which is taking the decision. So that is one aspect about the services being provided under the city umbrella. But there is a major issue. When this 26/11 happened in Mumbai, the chief minister could not talk to his police commissioner because there were so many calls going through the mobile network, it was totally clogged. So what is the lesson? We have to have an alternate system wherein the response agencies like fire, like police, like municipal services, like deputy commissioner office, they are connected on one network. And that is not the towers of the mobile companies. That is exclusively leased towers, or for example, there is a Tetra network. During the Olympics, this is used. So entire system can respond as a one government instead of working in silos. So these are certain lessons in the past of how to create a sustainable city.
Okay, great. So, what Mr. Chakti has said, that we need a system where everyone, the entire emergency, services can be put in action as a unified force. Mr. Davekar, your views in, how we can make our cities more sustainable in terms of the natural resources that they are using, in terms of, their a call to action for any disaster?
See, madam, disaster and development, these are both separate thing. As far as disaster is concerned, when any disaster is coming, like earthquake, like a flood, like cyclone, technology plays a major role. I think first of all, when any disaster comes, we lose connectivity. So if we if we strengthen our infrastructure, if we strengthen our roads, so we can rescue people immediately. And development also plays major role. If we have end-to-end connectivity, so our team, our rescue team, etc., will can move towards the end, and everyone can be saved.
Okay, so what our speakers here, the city planners are talking about is physical infrastructure and digital infrastructure. Mr. Gupta, when we are talking about sustainable cities, it's and disaster resistant cities, we need to be prepared before the disaster strikes us. So but major challenge what they are saying is the physical connectivity and the digital connectivity. What are your views? What are your suggestions on that?
So the challenges which both of them has raised is a very, very, like I'll say, common for India and most of the developing countries in the world. And if I say that physical infrastructure, yes, I agree on the physical infrastructure which we spoke earlier, that utility corridors which provides a sustained infrastructure, whether it's a telecom, because most of the disasters have either power failures or digital failures, infrastructure failures. So if you have a rightly done, where we don't have a concept of utility corridors in the country, if those are made up, definitely our physical infrastructure will get strengthened, which will deliver in those disasters time. That's the point number one. The point number two, with the respect to the digital infrastructure. In today's time, there are multiple solutions which are available in the market as a technology which can drive, like Mr. Chakti mentioned about towers getting down and nobody could communicate. Today we build up private LTE networks, which wherein only the part of people who are part of that group can only talk in that network. So that congestion issue, it has evolved outside India. When I talk about US, when I talk about Europe, there are many countries which have built up these private LTE networks for this emergency or a private communication between the certain set of people. Because security is another threat which is coming through, cyber security, digital security is another threat which is coming through. And so these private LTE networks which exist in the today's time, beyond disaster as well, which can deliver a different setup. Then there's another technology is today we are talking about low Earth orbit satellites, which has no physical impact but can deliver a different set of value. So there are multiple technology solutions. One we say is the mobile towers or the fiber connectivity across. The other one is we are saying is a satellite connectivity. Then we are talking about private LTE connectivity. There are multiple solutions, mediums which are available to connect it during different times. And we always, like, data center will have a redundant data recovery center in a different state or different location. We'll always have a second redundant path to a fiber to get it disconnected. When we talk about telcos, today telcos typically operate in disaster environment as well. There are a number of solutions. We are working with the telcos as we speak to manage this disaster recovery at a given point of time. Like what happens at a certain given point of typhoon comes in Calcutta, there was a 7-path medium to connect to rest of the country was created, so that we stay connected at that given point of time when such incidents happen. But there are multiple technologies, I'll say, for in a simple way, multiple technologies, multiple solutions are available in today's time. Now, how do we implement that back into the government system to make it effective? That's a larger question to address, which I feel the moment we get into individual silos operations of the cities, of the governments, if we move them into integrated environment, I'm again emphasizing on the part The moment we move into an integrated environment of the ICT infrastructure in a city, will leverage these values, these advantages of the technologies into our society. Today, my advantage is the benefits of these technologies are missing because one department may be using certain benefits, other department may be using different technologies, and it's not getting integrated in. That's the only take. Technologies are available, can be utilized if it's operated in integrated fashion. And yes, actions will happen because AI ML is capable of today to deliver those actions on an immediate basis. It's in milliseconds we talk about. We don't talk about, when we're talking about 5G today, we are talking about less than a millisecond latency. So that's where the world is moving, and that's where we need to move as a cities as well in a digitally connected society.
Okay, that's right. Technologies are there, solutions are there. It is the implementation that has to be done in the right way. But before we, let go of our speakers, one question to all of you. What are the major changes that you expect in the next few years? We are talking about integrated and connected cities. That is the topic of our day. What are the major changes that you are expecting in next few years, Mr. Chakri?
I was listening to one eminent person, and he said that by 2030, he said that turning point will come when the cost of working through AI ML will be significantly less for corporates, and that is where the employment opportunities will suddenly go down in the manufacturing sector. It will lead to, of course, efficiencies, productivity in the economy, but that is one eventuality we have to be prepared for. So the lesson is that we have to train, we have to reskill our youth, our employees in AI, ML, etc. Second thing will be blockchain. We have not discussed it, but blockchain has different types of advantages. One is the storage part, one is the chain part. So in both these aspects, revolutionary things are happening. The current systems of storage on paper, etc., these will all end. The blockchain networks of different states will talk to each other. So it won't be that you are writing a letter as of today. No, the blockchain networks will talk to each other. This is the second aspect which I foresee. And third is back to the basics. You asked in your last question about disaster resilience. Yes, definitely the basics will remain. If you are in Odisha, you have to plan for cyclones. You will build shelters for cyclone. If you are in Arunachal Pradesh, Andaman Nicobar, you will build earthquake safe buildings. These are high intensity, earthquake intensity prone areas. So the response will vary depending upon the geographical location and the situation there. These are basics. Basics won't change. How we bring the results for these basics, that will change mainly through technology. Thank you.
Right. So what Mr. Chakri is saying, in our pursuit of technology, let's not forget the basics. Let's design our cities as per their context, as per their climate, as per their the needs and the surroundings. And secondly, reskill our population so that when the time comes and we have AI and ML taking over our jobs, we have people who can be employed in different sector. So it's basically reskilling. And blockchain, as you rightly mentioned, yes, that's the future. We already are seeing in other parts of the world happening. Mr. Davekar, what major changes do you foresee? What is your outlook?
Yes, ma'am. If you adopt technology at its utmost, like 100% digital payment adoption in government transactions, it will enable more fast, secure, and trustworthy ecosystem in the country. Technology-powered learning ecosystem in government schools, using centralizing learning that will provide equal access to knowledge and resources to the students, regardless of their affluency. The integrated and paperless or less paper offices with flexible working arrangements, they will allow offices to operate with ease even in challenging situations also. So these are some some perspective uh, which we can see by adoption of the technology. Uh, and the most importantly, a comprehensive cybersecurity policy, guideline, and regulations
Right.
are which is a need of the hour today. We have to regulate, we have to safeguard our IT infrastructures. We have to provide safety to our citizens, digital footprints of the country. Everything are being uh, made safe by these kind of policies.
Right. Right.
So these are also to be these are also needs to be strengthened.
That's right. Very rightly said. EduTech, we just spoke about that, technology in education and contactless, faceless, and paperless operations. That is going to be the future where even the payments are digital. We are going to move forward. We are already seeing that happening. And that is the future that looks like. And cybersecurity, another very important aspect. It's a topic in itself for a discussion. So, Mr. Gupta, how do you see the future of our cities? Integrated, connected cities, cyber security. That's one of the major challenges for any city.
We'll solve all this by 10 years, like you're talking about 2030.
Okay.
I see today, just if a number for everyone's reference, 2.2 million users, new users gets added on a digital network every day. That's the how the digital network is changing. Our IP traffic worldwide is growing 3 times every month. Like it's growing multifolds. The growth is happening. What it is doing to us, it's making us, the best thing is making us much more educated. And the more educated we are, the more knowledge we have, will be much more productive society, much more efficient society. Today my literacy level is too low as a country, and the way I see it is 10 years down the line, my literacy level will go multi-folds, at least 5 times where I am today. And if I'm 5 times more literate, my GDP of the country will go at least, like we are talking, our honorable prime minister is talking about 5 trillion economy. It will move faster than that what we are talking. And 2030 is that time when we'll have that kind of a GDP, we'll have a skilled workforce where, yes, there's definitely a shift happening from a physical workforce to a skilled workforce. That's where we are. So we'll be more educated, more skilled society, more sensible society, delivering a much better productivity. And that's what we all are looking at as a smart city. When I talk about a definition of a smart city, when I say that city has to be smart, my basic definition is that city has to be livable, city has to be economically viable and sustainable. And that's where we are entering in with this digital technology enablement of this digital era where we are going in. So I'll only say a simple word here that building smart cities is just a journey for us. It's not a destination. And building this converse smart cities, integrated smart cities, with our Digital India program, there's another program which we are running as a country where there are 8 or 9 pillars where we are running on multiple. If we convert these two together in an integrated platform, will definitely unleash a value which Indians will be proud of. It's a new era. Industry 4.0, we are not talking here. That itself is like cybersecurity, a separate topic to talk about. There are multiple things happening across with this digital technology, what we are going through. But yes, that's where I'm saying it's just a journey, not a destination.
That's right. You very rightly, you summed it up. Yes, smart cities is a journey. We still have to go a long way. And again, smart cities means livable, economically viable, and sustainable. And while talking to our, policy makers, Mr. Ajay Chakri and Mr. PC Davekar, I think the feeling that we get is we are in the right direction. We are moving in the right direction, and I think we are very soon, as Mr. Gupta said, by 2030, we will see a different India, probably, different cities we will see. So, on that very optimistic note and positive note, let me thank all our very eminent speakers here for sharing your views. And I think our audience had some very valuable takeaways from this conversation. Thank you so much.